6 weeks down in the NFL for the AFC North, and things are looking, well, they're looking a bit weird. Not quite what we expected heading into the season, but the division is looking quite interesting through 6 weeks. You got some teams that are looking great, teams that are trying to figure it out, and you got a team that might be done at this point, may want to look towards the offseason. Let's not waste any more time. Let's get into it. So, after 6 games in the AFC North, we've got the Ravens first place at 4-2. The Steelers tied for first place at 4-2. The Cincinnati Bengals in third place at 2-4. And the Cleveland Browns last place 1-5. We had some games that we played this past Sunday. We need to get into them so we can speak on how the season has gone for each one of these teams so far and what to expect moving forward. So I think in this scenario, we should probably start from top to bottom. So we will start with the Baltimore Ravens, who hosted the Washington Commanders and had one hell of a game, man. This was the Battle of the Beltway. It was very impactful. Great game. Both teams went at it. Loved what I saw from this game. The Ravens, after starting 0-2 in the season, have won 4 straight games. And it seems like they have finally figured out their identity on offense. They're starting to figure out what they want to do. It took them 3 weeks to finally figure out how to properly utilize Derrick Henry. But since week 3, Derrick Henry has been a key contributing factor to this offense. And he has been the best running back in football by far. He's number 1 in rushing yards, rushing touchdowns, total touchdowns by a running back. I'm pretty sure he's first in yards per carry, first in total carries. He's first in damn near every rushing statistic. It has been amazing to see what Derrick Henry's been doing. And Lamar Jackson himself, he's playing at such a high level, man. He's top 10 in rushing yards. He's top 10 in passing yards. I mean, it's crazy. Nearly every passing statistic, Lamar Jackson's within the top 10. And nearly every rushing statistic for a quarterback, or just in general, he's in the top 10. It's been quite a crazy season. The pace that both Lamar and Derrick Henry are on is insane. Derrick Henry is on pace to have another 2,000 rushing yard season and damn near 20 plus touchdowns. Lamar is on pace to have the first ever 4,000 yard passing, 1,000 yard rushing season by a quarterback. It's insane how this offense has been able to produce these last 4 games, but it seems like the Ravens have finally figured themselves out. And that showcased itself on Sunday when they took on the Commanders. Lamar Jackson throwing for over 300 yards, Derrick Henry rushing for over 100 yards on the ground. Both guys were just lethal, and they were a huge contributing factor towards the Ravens getting this 30-23 victory over the Commanders. The offense is looking great. Lamar's spreading the ball around. We're starting to see Zay Flowers really play at a high level. Back-to-back games of 100-plus yards receiving for him. Rashad Bateman is now the wide receiver 2, and he's starting to get those looks as a wide receiver 2, and he's starting to produce like a wide receiver 2. If you take a look at his production throughout this season, you'll see he's on pace to have nearly 800 to 900 yards receiving and a couple touchdowns with that, which would be perfect wide receiver 2 production, and that would be a great year for Bateman. So we're watching the Ravens offense play at a high level, and they've been effective over the last month of football. And the way they were able to control the pace in this game against the Commanders, especially in the second half of this game, was a great sign for things to come. Defensively, the Ravens are still a work in progress. Defensively, they've been one of the worst pass defenses in football, while also being the best run defense in football. They shut the run down once again in this game, continuing to be the best run defense in football. Their pass rushing continued to be consistent and being able to produce at a somewhat high level. But this pass defense is still a work in progress. However, you did see some level of improvement this week compared to previous weeks. They were going up against the number 1 scoring offense that was putting up 30 a game damn near every week, and they held them to 23 points. So you at least feel like you're starting to see some progress with the defense. But we have, especially with the secondary, but we have to see a little bit more consistencies because they're going to face off against some high-octane offenses moving forward. And if they do not get it together in the secondary, it's going to be troubling for them in the long run. So this defense still has work to do, but the Ravens right now, they're in a groove. The Ravens are in a groove. This is what we expected to see from them coming into the season. That 0-2 start really wasn't much to really panic about. We knew the Ravens would eventually figure it out, get it together, and get themselves in a position where they'd be competing for the division and hopefully going far in January. But we have to wait and see. So far, they're on the right track. Next week, they play the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on Monday Night Football. Next up, we've got the Pittsburgh Steelers. I cannot tell you, man. I don't know what I witnessed in this game. This was such a weird game. I will always continue to say this. As long as you're a competent team in the National Football League, you will find a way to win football games. This was one of those games where all you needed from the Steelers was for them to be competent and to not turn the ball over at a high rate. The defense showed up once again and completely terrorized. They absolutely terrorized the Raiders. They completely terrorized the Raiders offense. But more importantly, they watched the Raiders just sit back and implode on themselves. I mean, the Raiders just kept making mistake after mistake. The Raiders offense could not stop turning the ball over. They kept getting smoked left and right. TJ Watt, once again, coming out here and showcasing why he's the best defensive player in football. And it's not really much of a debate. Once again, forcing another fumble. I mean, the guy's he's just a monster. He's the best in the game. You got to give him credit. Defense was on point. They were just, getting to the Raiders. They were just aggressive and getting to Connell throughout the entire game, just making it so difficult for him to feel comfortable at all. It was that type of thing. Connell really couldn't do much in this game, and they just kept turning the ball over in key situations. But what made it worse for them is special teams also couldn't do a good job because they let a player go free release to the punter, and it led to a punt block. I mean, they just kept making mistake after mistake after mistake. And here the Steelers were taking advantage of every possible mistake the Raiders were doing. Meanwhile, for the Steelers offense, not much to really say here, man. It's such an interesting situation in regards to how the quarterback position is going for Pittsburgh, because Justin Fields hasn't done good enough to make you believe he absolutely deserves that starting job for the rest of the season. But he hasn't played poor enough to the point where you're like, yeah, get Russell Wilson in. I still feel like the job is his to lose, but as long as the Steelers are winning football games, there's no reason to pull him out. In this game, Justin Fields wasn't really spectacular, but he wasn't doing anything to really hurt them. And again, he was a part of the aspect that helped, get the offense going in certain situations. When the Raiders would turn the ball over, Justin Fields was a big part of helping them get in the end zone a few times. Najee Harris also found the end zone and probably had his arguably best game of the season in this matchup. So the Steelers' offense is still problematic from a week-to-week basis. You don't know what you're going to get from them. They still struggle to move the ball at a consistent rate, but Justin Fields' ability to utilize his legs is starting to come into play more often throughout these last few weeks, and it's been a big part in helping the Steelers put points on the board. So I still feel like even though Justin Fields isn't playing the best of football, he's not like playing at an elite high level, I still feel like he's doing a good enough job to still hold firm as the starter. Now, again, if he plays poorly and the Steelers start losing more consistently, then they probably look to start Russell Wilson and go from there. But I don't think Justin Fields has done anything at this point that would make you believe he should not be the starter right now for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So there was a weird game. It was a very unfortunate game for the Raiders because anytime the Raiders defense made a play, it was immediately taken away by a penalty. They got a pick on Justin Fields, wiped away by roughing the passer. They get a stop on third down, wiped away by roughing the passer. I mean, they could not get a break. Every time they made a stop, penalties. So it was a rough game for the Raiders. You just got to deal with it however you got to deal with it. At the end of the day, Steelers got the win. They're tied for first place with Baltimore at 4-2, and they take on the New York Jets next week. Should be a good one. I believe it's a primetime game. I believe this might actually be Sunday Night Football that they take on the New York Jets. So it's going to be a fun one. We'll see how things go for them there. Next up, we have the Cincinnati Bengals. Oh, boy. The Bengals played with fire in this game. I'm going to be very honest. The Bengals were playing with fire in this game. They took on the New York Giants on Sunday Night Football, and it was a defensive battle throughout the entire game. It's crazy to see Cincinnati go from the highest of highs offensively to the lowest of lows. Because we saw a week ago, they went head-to-head with Baltimore and lost a thriller, a 41-38 thriller in overtime. So for them to go from that, where you got Joe Burrow throwing 5 touchdowns, Jamar Chase going off for nearly 200 yards receiving and 2 touchdowns, or a touchdown, and T. Higgins going off for 2 touchdowns, you're watching that and you're thinking, okay, they're going to take on this Giants team. They're going to be able to put numbers on them. They couldn't move the ball consistently. This Giants defense is for real. This Giants defense is legit because they shut down Joe Burrow and the offense. You weren't getting much of anything in this game. Joe Burrow was consistently pressured throughout the entirety of this game. I will say, I found it funny how Joe Burrow was able to take off and score on the opening drive. On a 3rd and 18, he took off and ran for a 47-yard touchdown. How in the hell does the Giants defense allow Joe Burrow to rush for a 47-yard touchdown on 3rd and 18? I'll never know. But that was a crazy play for Cincinnati, and it was pretty much the main aspect of offense you got from them. Other than that, they just struggled throughout the entire game. They were getting the ball to their playmakers, but they just weren't putting up points. T. Higgins was involved, Jamar Chase was involved, but they just weren't putting up points, and it was leading to a lot of empty drives. But defensively, Cincinnati came to play. Now, granted, the Giants' offense isn't great. In fact, the Giants' offense is the biggest weakness of their team. If the offense was better, the Giants would have a much better record than what they have right now. But their offense is weak. Daniel Jones is not really playing great football. At times he's played decent football, and at times he's played really poor football. He didn't do anything special in this game against the Bengals, and in fact, I don't even know if you would look at it and say he did anything decent. You feel like if Daniel Jones and the offense would have played a decent game, they probably win this. If Daniel Jones and the Giants offense was decent in this game, they probably win because it was a close game. From pretty much the entire first half, it was a 7-0 game. Giants were never able to score. You get into the second half, they finally find the end zone. It's a 7-7 game. Cincinnati goes down the field, scores a field goal. It's a 10-7 game, and you're just sitting there throughout the rest of the game, and it's just like 10-7, and at some point, you're just hoping the Giants can do something. The Giants' ineptitude on offense, and the fact that they don't have a kicker who's missed 2 field goals to try to help them in this game, it cost you a game. But at the end of the day, despite Cincinnati playing with fire, it came down to a 3rd and 11. And this is why you pay these quarterbacks the top tier money. When you have a top tier quarterback, you pay them for this moment. Joe Burrow is seen as one of the big 4. You expect him to deliver in one of these moments. And that's what he does. He buys time on 3rd and 11, and completes the ball down the field to convert for a first down. And you got to feel sick for the Giants defense, man. They played a great game. And they had 2 opportunities to get the ball back to their offense. On the 3rd and 11, they could have made a stop. And on the very next play, the Bengals ran the ball. The ball gets fumbled. The Giants have a chance to grab the ball and get it and take the turnover. And they managed to mess that up. They couldn't create the ball. The ball just goes out of bounds, and the Bengals retain it. So that was pretty much it. And then next thing you know, Chase Brown just goes up the middle for a touchdown, makes it 17-7, and that's it. That's pretty much it. That's the night right there for the Giants. Giants defense played a hell of a game, but the offense didn't show up and didn't do anything consistently. For the Bengals defense showed up, made sure Daniel Jones and the offense couldn't get going. They weren't going to let an upset happen. And at the end of the day, Joe Burrow needed to do what he needed to do in the 4th quarter in those key moments, and he did. So he needed to deliver. He did. Bengals escape with the win. They go to 2-4 in a situation that they really needed to win. And next week, we actually get one of those interesting matchups because it's an AFC North battle. Next week, they're heading to Cleveland to take on the Browns. In a divisional game, the Bengals have to have if they want to get back into this. I still believe the Bengals have a chance to get back in it. I don't think their season is over. I do not think they're dead. They will find a way to climb back into this. This was a game they played with fire. They got it done. They cannot afford to lose these type of matchups. We'll see what happens for them next week. Speaking of the Browns, they are the last team to talk about here. And boy, what can you say about the Cleveland Browns? You see, with the Ravens and Steelers, they're doing good right now. Ravens are heading in the right direction. Winners of 4 straight. Pittsburgh's still in the matchup. You know, they're still 4-2. They're still looking good. They still feel like they could be a playoff team. Cincinnati dug themselves in this hole, but they're slowly trying to climb back into it. And it feels like they'll find a way to get back into the season. With Cleveland, season's over. You feel nothing from this team. It feels like it's over. It feels like it's done. They've got nothing left. They take on the Philadelphia Eagles, who are coming off of a bye week. Now, the Eagles have not been playing good football. The Eagles have been struggling, and against good teams, they've looked relatively poor. So, coming off of the bye week at 2-2, you knew the Eagles needed to get this game to try to get themselves back on track. They couldn't afford to lose to a Cleveland team that's reeling and playing poor football. They had to, especially because the Eagles were at home. And in this game, man, I'm not going to lie, the Browns didn't play terrible, but they didn't do enough to win. You know, the defense, I think the defense did a relatively good job, but at the end of the day, man, the Eagles, they got their weapons back. You got A.J. Brown back, you got Devontae Smith back, and that was literally the difference maker. Philadelphia could have lost this game without those two. Jalen Hurts didn't turn the ball over. He had 2 touchdown passes, and guess what? Those touchdown passes were to who? A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. That was a difference maker. The Eagles got healthy, got their 2 best receivers back, and those 2 receivers ultimately helped them win this game. Offensively for the Browns, they didn't score a single touchdown. This was a 20-16 loss. The 1 touchdown was on a blocked field goal by Myles Garrett, who again is having another great season, one of the best defensive players in football. The Browns' offense is so terrible. Deshaun Watson in this game, once again, you find yourself saying this about Deshaun Watson. Oh my God. He didn't play terrible, but he did nothing special. He didn't do anything at all. Like, you're paying this guy top tier money to do something, and he's not doing anything. He didn't play like trash. He wasn't complete garbage, but he didn't do anything. He did absolutely nothing in this game. Yet another game he passes for under 200 yards, and they can't find the end zone. What do you do with this? What do you do with this if you're Cleveland? They're stuck. They made a horrible decision, taking a chance, trading away those first-round picks to get Deshaun Watson, and then paying him a $230 million fully guaranteed deal, and now he's not even living up to it. There's a lot of problems with the team. You know, injuries play a factor. The defense at times can be shaky. Stefanski and his play calling has been problematic throughout the season. Guys at times aren't catching the ball, like, you know, Amari Cooper isn't playing his best game. He'll drop some passes. You wouldn't see much from Jerry Jeudy. Yeah, there's been issues. Offensive line at times can be shaky, but you pay this guy in Deshaun Watson to be able to deliver in these moments, and he can't do anything with it. He wasn't garbage in this game, but it was a whole bunch of nothing. You just felt like it was empty stats. He wasn't doing anything on the field. He was making no impact. The offense couldn't move the ball. Another tough loss for the Cleveland Browns. Sitting at 1-5, there's nowhere left to go. There's nothing left to do. You don't even know where you go from here, what you can do. Stefanski once again came to the podium and expressed how they're not benching Deshaun Watson. He is their starter. They're going to continue to move forward with them. He doesn't have a choice. The owner is not going to allow him to sit Deshaun Watson. And you can't sit Deshaun Watson. The second Watson gets benched, his time as a Brown is done. And that's them officially admitting that they made a horrible mistake. And they're not ready to do that yet. Not to mention they're paying this man $230 fully guaranteed. They have no choice but to play him. The Browns are in a terrible situation. And I don't know what you can do from here to make it better. They're screwed. They are screwed right now. So they take the loss here. They go to 1-5, and they've got a divisional matchup against Cincinnati next week. Now, you know, based on the history in terms of how they've played Joe Burrow and the Bengals, the Browns usually play well against them, and they've usually done a good job in beating them. In fact, they technically own the matchup against Joe Burrow. He's 1-4 against them. Actually, I believe he's 1-4 he's 1-4 or 1-5. I do believe it's 1-4, but you know he has a really bad record against the Browns. So, you know, I guess you lean on that and hope for the best. But honestly, this Cleveland team just looks done. I don't know what else you can do at this point. It must be tough for these guys to go out there and play football, knowing the situation they're in. It is what it is at the end of the day. So, that is the state of the AFC North for Week 6. Ravens on top, first place, 4-2. Heading in the right direction, continuing to rise. The Steelers hanging in there at 4-2. Shaky at times, but they're still competitive. They're battling with Baltimore for that first place spot in the division. Cincinnati started off poorly, trying to slowly climb their way back into this. They're slowly climbing themselves back into this, one win at a time. Well, hopefully for their sake. And then Cleveland, season's done. Season's done, and they know it. It is what it is. At the end of the day, you just got to deal with the cards that you're given. You made the choice to get Deshaun Watson. You got to live with the results. But anyway, guys, that is all I have to say about this Week 6 assessment of the AFC North. That's all I've got. Thank you guys so much for watching and tuning in. Be sure to stay safe, and peace out.